Okay. Elena has Down syndrome. She also was born with a large hole in her heart called a VSD, and that was fixed with a patch, a large patch, in October of last year. She had pulmonary hypertension and pulmonary edema, and all of that was caused from her heart failure, but it has now been fixed because of her surgery. She also has dysphagia, which is the inability to swallow well, and she aspirates. So she has a G-tube, which is a feeding button directly into her stomach. So she's tube fed, and we do feeding therapy for that as well.
Awesome. So what kind of trainings have you been able to have from outside sources?
We were given training on safely feeding her before we found out she had, right after we found out she had dysphagia. We were trained how to feed her safely so she wouldn't aspirate. That was before her heart surgery. Right before her surgery, for about 2 months before, she became extremely fatigued and lost all of her ability to swallow and eat on her own. And she already had her G-tube, so we have been working with speech therapy to try to get that back and help her eat better on her own, and also swallow therapy, which helps her swallowing muscles contract. Have physical therapy. Children with Down syndrome are slower at developing, and she's 18 months old right now. She has been sitting up since she was 13 months old, but we are working on more mobility, trying to get her to stand and use her leg muscles and possibly crawl.
So what unique challenges have you faced with a child that has a disability compared to your other experiences with other children? Or maybe also what unique challenges could you possibly foresee in the future that maybe you haven't experienced yet?
Okay. The biggest challenge is her feeding. I think she doesn't understand that she needs to eat on her own. So I'm grateful she has her G-tube, but she doesn't like to eat on her own very often. And she is not able to be mobile like my other children at this age. In the future, I know everything will come to her more slowly. So just working with the right professionals to help her gain whatever potential she has. Usually, children with Down syndrome have a lot of potential, but it's being patient enough to let them develop on their own time. That can be challenging.
What tips would you give to parents or future educators about working with individuals with disabilities that maybe from your experience that you could help them with?
What I've learned with having a child with a disability is, and more so too, just having more children, having 6 children, they're all so different, and so they all have their own timing of how they want to learn. But with a child with disabilities, being in special education with children with disabilities, always keeping in mind that each of them is on their own path, and balancing having high expectations and also allowing them to progress at their own rate. and always looking at them as an individual, and that you can't, even if they have similar disabilities with other children, that they have some things in common with those other children, but keeping an individual perspective, because they're more individual than they are as a group.
What pros, positives, exciting things, fun things have you been able to be a part of an experience that you wouldn't have experienced if, Elena didn't have Down syndrome or any type of disability?
Elena is extremely patient and content, and she is just happy to see you whenever you walk up to her. She will wait for you as long as something takes. Like if she's hungry or she's tired or frustrated, she'll still just sit there and play and wait for you to come to her. And then when you do come to her, she just has the biggest smile on her face. She's just happy to see you, and she's just sweet and loving and not presumptuous. And I know she's really young, but I can see that in her, that she just doesn't care about that stuff. She's just happy to see you whenever you get to her. So
Agreed. Has it been easy or difficult for you to reach outside sources for assistance and advice on disabilities or, different needs that she'll need in her life?
So far, I have found that it has been very available and easy. There are a lot of resources from all the nurses and staff. When we were at Primary Children's, were always just surrounding us, or if we had a question, the neonatologist would be right in. And now we work with early intervention for her therapies, and I can call them anytime, and if they don't know the answer, they ask until they find the answer and get right back to me. And anytime I have a question about, even if it's something it's not in their area, they say, I will find that out for you. I will help you with that. I will, even if it's not their area. And they just want to help to make sure she's taken care of the best.
That's awesome. That's good to know. Has having a child with a disability been scary to think about her future, whether it be in education or different experiences?
Every once in a while, I worry that she might not get what she needs, or she might fall through some cracks because something isn't kept up on or maintained. But I feel that's rare. I feel like most of the time, as long as if I continue just doing what I'm doing and making sure she's taken care of and communicating, as long as I feel like I'm communicating well with whoever is taking care of her, whether it's education or therapies, and they know my concerns and we can communicate. Also, just keeping in mind that patience of letting her have her own time to develop. And that sometimes gets hard for me, because it's hard not to see progress for a long time. And then every once in a while you'll see a little bit of progress, and it makes a big difference. But in whatever program she's in growing up, I feel like if I keep that perspective of patience and just continuing to work at it at her pace, I think her future is good, and I try not to think of what could happen.
Right. What has given you confidence to work with Elena and working through her obstacles and her challenges that she'll face?
I think there are several things that have given me confidence. First, I feel like she's just my baby,
Mm-hmm.
just like any of my other babies. And I'm her mom, and so taking care of her like I've taken care of all of my other kids helps with that. She's still just a baby. She's still just a person
Mm-hmm.
who needs to be taken care of. Other things, the therapists and the doctors and the nurses have always been confident builders, saying, you're doing a great job, you're doing the best you can, keep going, it's okay to have a bad day, it's okay to not feel like you're doing everything possible to help her every single day, because it's exhausting, and it's okay to just do your best, and she's happy and healthy, and that's what's more important. I just have to be patient with myself as well, because being a caregiver is hard, emotionally and physically and mentally, and it's we have to be patient with ourselves too, and just keep going and loving them, and it works out, and they're so sweet that she smiles at you, and your bad day starts going away. So it's that helps a lot too.
My name is Adam Sessions. I'm the Employment and Day Services Director for Chrysalis here in Cedar City. My primary role is to oversee the day services during the day from 8 to 2. I also help coordinate all of the jobs for people with disabilities throughout our community, which has become a monster. Not something that Chrysalis has done in the past, but something that coincides with the new laws that are coming down here in the next few years. But I've enjoyed working, excuse me, with the school, seeing it develop. We have Iron County School District has a full-time teacher and 4 aides that work in our school. They've developed a structure that would help more moderate to severe clientele succeed. So each day they have A day, B day structure similar to what the local high schools have, but the curriculum is a little bit varied from what you'd see in a normal mainstream environment. But the students are able to participate in all their core classes, their English, their arts, their PE, their social studies, their history. The teachers work with each student in an individual IEP, an individualized education plan. And we're a part of that team, we're a part of that discussion, and it's great to watch the students develop and choose their own path and watch it be individually tailored to their needs. So that's more what happens at the school.
Perfect. How long total, doesn't just school, but in your career, how long have you worked in special education with Chrysalis?
So my experience, it's actually been around for the past 6 or 7 years here at Chrysalis. It started with just a sped teacher that would come to one of our sites, and she set up a classroom with probably 8 or 9 students at the time, and then she would develop again those individualized structures, but it was only for a few hours a day. And that I was a director at the time, an associate director at the time, and I was able to see that occurring. I was not directly over that teacher, but my direct experience has been for the past 2 years where I have directly overseen a school. The managers that are there are they're in a assistant role to the school district, but their job is to make sure that behaviors are well managed there. So I've seen the school district employ this full-time teacher instead of a few hours a week for each student. It's become 6 hours a day for each student. They're able to have the aides also participate in different curriculums, so they're teaching different subjects to different levels or function levels of the client. So it's progressed over time to I've had a lot of input in that at different times. I've been able to meet with their correlation committee and suggest different things, but I think overall just a supervisory role and just giving input when I'm needed.
Awesome. What made you want to get into special education?
You know, it was funny because I never saw myself in special education. I never saw myself being associated with it. My plans were to graduate from SUU and to go on to medical school, and so I had to work for a year. I had to work for. I couldn't matriculate to my program for a year, and so the day I graduated, I interviewed for the associate director position, was given it, and fell in love with the clientele. I fell in love with helping other people. You know, making a difference daily became not just a cliche, but something that I felt like we truly tried to aspire to. And I can tell you that the people that I worked with were the reason I stayed. I mean, they have a genuine concern and love for the population. I quickly realized that the disabled population was more fun to work with than the general population, because I think that oftentimes the general population doesn't want help, or assumes that they don't need the help, or is resistant to any sort of outside influence. But with a special education environment, especially with the youth, you know, and our ages are a little bit different on youth, because we have students that are 12 to 22. So, and they're currently pursuing different levels of education, even post. You know, I've got several SU students that are clients that attend, and they have staff that will assist them in some different capacities. But seeing that they really do benefit, they need that, they need the mentoring, the advocacy, the impact, and I think that's why special ed is for me.
Okay.
So.
Cool. What are some unique challenges that you face working in the special education environment that you might not see working with students in another classroom setting?
Oh, I think behaviors, definitely. I think you have to understand that people with disabilities at times will have different behaviors. They might be socially off-putting, but the more familiar you become with the specific diagnosis or the specific disability, the more empathy you have in those situations. I think it allows you to be confident when they're having a crisis, and you know, keep a level head, help them manage. When you're calm, you're able to calm them down. But definitely, I'd say the behaviors that they manifest because of the disability, or because of maybe the societal construct we have for them. You know, these expectations, they don't know how to necessarily communicate really well in those times. They become upset or agitated, and it just takes a lot of de-escalation and patience to kind of turn it around. So.
Right. I've been there. Have you, I guess, what are some cool, unique experiences that you've enjoyed that you wouldn't have been able to be a part of if you weren't a part of this environment?
I definitely say graduation and job placement, vocation. You know, once you obtain a diploma, you're so much more employable.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been exciting to see students that started when they were very young, and they have progressed and graduated, and they've gone on to some transitioned into different settings. They moved away from the state, but they keep in touch, and they have jobs, and they're functioning members of society, and they don't feel like the disability kept them from pursuing their life goals. So I would definitely say seeing, you know, it's almost, I tell people sometimes, like, I raised a lot of teenagers, because, you know, now I've raised probably, or not raised, but I've been associated again with the school for 5 or 6 years, and I've seen dozens and dozens of individuals come into our program, benefit from the educational pathway that was chosen, this individualized plan, and then move on. And it's not just lip service, it's not just to keep them busy, it has a purpose, and they're able to go be contributing members of society. So that's the reward, I would say, of being associated.
That is cool. That is awesome. What has been, if you can think of a time that has been your favorite in an individual, seeing them improve?
I had one individual, her name was Tana. She came down to us, and she was really struggling with lots of different things, and she didn't trust people. She had a lot of specific disabilities that impacted her, but she initially had refused to go to school to comply with the judge's order, and it took a lot of time, a lot of one-on-one, just helping her understand the importance of it, and you know, she had to choose. And I think once she did choose, I saw her obtain her diploma, and she's moved on. She now has 2 children, and she has, you know, relationships that are independent of Chrysalis, that's what we want. We want to see people live as independently as they can. But not everybody sees the beginning from the end, and I think for her, you know, I picked her up, I brought her to the program, we had our rounds, you know, and over a few years, I saw her eventually accept that these people are trying to help me. And
are there a lot of outside resources readily available to the family, to the individual?
You know, we work with a couple. I think that's probably something that is needed. I think that's where Chrysalis fills a unique role in a lot of these individuals', you know, in lives. Is that those educational years are so formative, they're so crucial, and there's a lot of resources available during those formative years. when they finish, we have some vocational rehabilitation where they'll help them with dollars and to get employment in the communities or to receive assistance that they need for travel, things like that. But you know, as far as they age, I think that that's where the biggest struggle becomes. I think if you talk to, you know, law enforcement or people that are over the correctional facilities, they'll say that there's a big demographic that are there that should not be there. And when we talk to them and discuss them, you know, we realize that this is the population. Those are the people that we should be helping as a community provider or a home and community based provider. Is that they can live and function in society, but they can still have the support they need when their disability is a barrier at times to them. And again, our intent is to get people so independent that they can go function.
What would be one aspect of special education for all ages that you would change?
Integration. I think that I've seen people with disabilities segregated into their own environments. There's special ed rooms. There's maybe even a school that's specifically designed for people with disabilities. I think that that's changing. I think that, you know, there's the 50-50 rule that school districts are often trying to meet. They want to integrate. That just means 50% are disabled, 50% are non-disabled. And I think that that's going to be key. I think that just that integrated environment is incredibly powerful, not just for people with disabilities, but for the non-disabled.
Hillary Welch, Iron County School District 8.
Awesome. How long have you been involved in special education?
7.5 years.
7.5, so full time. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
awesome. What made you want to go into special education and help the students in these programs?
It started with wanting a job where I could still be a stay-at-home mom, and then I just fell in love with working with students with special needs.
Okay.
I enjoy it.
Awesome. What are some cool experiences that you've been able to experience in this type of environment, in this classroom, that you wouldn't have been able to experience in another classroom?
Seeing the aha moments when something finally clicks and they all of a sudden make that leap ahead in their understanding. It is an amazing experience.
From your experience, I mean, you've worked in this field for 7.5 years. Have you been able to see that resources are readily available to special education students as well as their family?
Yes and no. I think especially in this environment, it can be a little bit more difficult because we are outside the normal education tier.
Right.
And so we can have a little bit more difficulty getting everybody on board. On the other hand, we have a great support system set up. And so with a little finagling, we can get what we need.
Perfect. Perfect. If you could change one thing about the overall education system, the special education system, what would it be?
Expectation that everybody should be at the same place at the same time. I don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody learns differently, and that needs to be taken into consideration.
Okay. But how does special education change the quality of the students' lives?
I feel it allows us to meet their needs at their level and ensure that we can help them achieve a quality of life that they would not otherwise have.
All right, I'm Malia Robbins. I'm the special education teacher, the lead teacher here at Chrysalis. I have my master's in ed, emphasis in SPED, mild, moderate, K through 12.
What drives you to keep wanting to work with people with disabilities? What motivates you?
What motivates me? I love my job. I love working with these kids. I love working with troubled youth. And most of the kids that we have here at Chrysalis, they're mild, moderate, not severe. Well, here anyways. And it's that behavior, so being able to see that spark and, you know, that light bulb go on in their expressions, and they get it and they gain confidence. That's what motivates me.
Not just in Cedar City, but in all of your experience, is there a lot of resources available?
I think there are a good number of resources available. learning at Chrysalis, they got the DSPD,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So that's huge for individuals with disability. But just talking about high school or K through 12, whatever's on the IEP, they'll get those resources because that's a legally binding document.
If you could change like one major aspect of special education from your years of experience, what would be something that you would change?
I would change the mentality that these kids are not capable for the high rigor of work. What is it called? Learned helplessness. You know, when you get into the system of the SPED system, I guess getting that IEP, I find that by the time they get to high school, they have learned to be helpless, basically, and have that classification of the disability define them. And so that rigor, being able to do work that is here versus super watered down work, that would be what I would change.
And what has been one of your favorite experiences seeing a kid in one of your programs or one of your classes improve and learn?
So I'm mild and moderate, but like I said, we have at least 2 kids that come here. One kid just arrived, who is severe, autistic, nonverbal. And we just got him last week and I was very hesitant because this is a mild, moderate setting, you know. But I sat down with him, I gave him Play-Doh because he could not keep still. And so then I gave him a book with letters. And he like automatically was able to make the shapes. And he was able to repeat what I said, A through J we worked on. I mean, I think that was a 10-15 minute time span, but when we talk about like the reality of attention, that was pretty much it. But I guess that's the most recent one that I would feel successful or happy about because that gave me hope that we can service him here and make progress.
Awesome. All right, and then one final question. How does special education improve the overall quality of the individual's life, in your opinion?
Okay, so I think it improves the overall quality of the individual by allowing them to know that the disability is there and it's okay, so we will validate that. However, we provide the accommodations and the modifications so that they can be successful in